Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa Parudika Acharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Shila Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parudika Acharya Ashtotar Tadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj srimadbhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. That's going to be a problem. It won't be a problem unless Maharaj comes. That'll be a problem. He doesn't come on Wednesday. You're right. See that? Turn off the oscillation. Just point it right at me. That's good. That's good. Perfect. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudiriye. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Anashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance on classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So before we proceed, second line, first word, long A, Ya. Just remember it, because he's in the kitchen. Dig up the marker. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 15th day of August 2018 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 4, entitled The Creation of the Fourth Order. Chapter 4, Sati quits her body. Text number 21. Ma vakpadamya pitadasmadastitha Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Taranna triptar asubridbir iditha Avyakta linga avadhuta sevitaha Ma vakpadamya pitar asmad astitha Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Taranna triptar asubrinbir iditha Avyakta linga avadhuta sevitaha Ma vakpadamya pitar asmad astita Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Tadanna triptar asubrinbir idita Avyakta linga avadhuta sevitaha Ma vakpadamya pitadasmadastita Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Subinbiridita Avyakta linga avadhuta sevitaha Ma vakpadamya pitadasmadastita Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Tadanna triptar asubrinbir idita Avyakta linga avadhuta sevita Damodar Ma vakpadamya pitadasmadastita Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabhi Tadanna triptat asubridbir idita Avyakta linga avadhuta sevita. One more, Mukunda. Ma vakpadamya isadasmadastita Ya yagyashala sunadhuma vartmabihi Tadanna triptat asubridbir idita Avyakta linga avadhuta sevita. Ma are not, vaha yours, padabhyaha opulences, pitaha O Father, asmat astitaha possessed by us, yaha which opulences, yagyashalasu in the sacrificial fire, na not, dhumavartmabihi by the path of sacrifices, tat anna triptai satisfied by the foodstuff of the sacrifice, asobridbihi satisfying bodily necessities, iditaha praised, avyaktalingaha whose cause is unmanifested, avadhuta sevitaha achieved by the self-realized souls. Translation. So Sati's finishing up her address to her father, Daksha. My dear father, the opulence we possess is impossible for either you or your flatterers to imagine. For persons who engage in fruitive activities by performing great sacrifices are concerned with satisfying their bodily necessities by eating foodstuff offered as a sacrifice. We can exhibit our opulences simply by desiring to do so. This can be achieved only by great personalities who are renounced, self-realized souls. Purport. Sati's father was under the impression that he was exalted in both prestige and opulence, and that he had offered his daughter to a person who was not only poor, but devoid of all culture. That person being Lord Shiva. Her father might have been thinking that although she was a chaste woman, greatly adherent to her husband was in a deplorable condition. To counteract such thoughts, Sati said that the opulence possessed by her husband could not be understood by materialistic persons like Daksha and his followers, who were flatterers and were engaged in fruitive activities. Her husband's position was different. He possessed all opulences, but he did not like to exhibit them. Therefore, such opulences are called avyakta or unmanifested. But if required, simply by willing, Lord Shiva can show his wonderful opulences, and such an event is predicted here, for it would soon occur. The opulence Lord Shiva possesses is enjoyable in renunciation and love of God, not in material exhibition of sense-gratificatory methods. Such opulences are possessed by personalities like the Kumars, Narada, and Lord Shiva, not by others. In this verse, the performers of the Vedic rituals are condemned. They have been described here as Duma Vartmabi, those who maintain themselves on the remnants of sacrificial foodstuff. There are two kinds of foodstuff offered in sacrifice. One kind is food offered in fruitive ritualistic sacrifices, and the other, the best, is food offered to Vishnu. Although in all cases, Vishnu is the chief deity on the sacrificial altar, the performers of fruitive rituals aim to satisfy various demigods to achieve in return some material prosperity. Real sacrifice, however, is to satisfy Lord Vishnu, and the remnants of such sacrifices are beneficial for advancement in devotional service. The process of elevation by performing sacrifices other than those aimed at Vishnu is very slow, and therefore it has been condemned in this verse. Vishwanath Chakravarti has described the ritualistic performers to be like crows, because crows delight in eating the remnants of food which has been thrown into the dustbin. All the Brahmins who were present for the sacrifice were also condemned by Sati. Whether or not King Daksha and his flatterers could understand the position of Lord Shiva, Sati wanted to impress upon her father that he should not think her husband to be without opulence. Sati, being the devoted wife of Lord Shiva, offers all kinds of material opulences to the worshippers of Lord Shiva. This fact is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto. Lord Shiva's worshippers sometimes appear more opulent than the worshippers of Lord Vishnu, because Durga, or Sati, being the superintendent in charge of material affairs, can offer all material opulences to the worshippers of Lord Shiva in order to glorify her husband, whereas the worshippers of Vishnu are meant for spiritual elevation, and therefore their material opulence is sometimes found to decrease. These points are very nicely discussed in the 10th canto. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, Krishna actually condemns those who are simply involved in what is probably called the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, the directions for elaborate sacrifices and austerities for material elevation. This is a section of the Vedas that deal with that. There he describes, first of all, Vyavasayatmaka buddhi ekeha kudanandana bahushaka yanantasa buddhayo vasayanam. This is a famous verse because Prabhupada was very inspired by the commentary by Vishwanath Chakrabarti to this verse. So Vyavasayatmaka buddhi means the one-pointed fixed mind, intelligence, for advancement in self-realization and devotional service, so bhakti. Not one-pointed mind for material advancement. This is describing the Vyavasayatmaka buddhi, intelligence. It's one, ekeha kurunandana. Those who are not this fixed, there are many different branches of your mind goes here and there. And in the very next verse, 2 verses, he says, Yamimam pushpitam vacham pavadan javipaschadaha veda vararatapata nanyadastiti varana kamatmana svarga para janma karma palapradam kriya vishesha baholam bhogaishwarya gatim pati. So here in these 2 verses, he's condemning those followers of the Vedas who are simply absorbed in what he calls the flowery language, pushpitam vacham. And they say this is what the Vedas are all about. They say there's nothing but this. They're not very intelligent. Veda Vadarata Pata. Now this phrase, Veda Vadarata, is important. There's a Sanskrit idiom using this word rata. If you look it up in the dictionary, it means basically those who engage. But it's come to mean those who are so-called knowers of the Vedas. Veda Vadarata. You see? In other words, they have the reputation, they have a social position, but they're materialistically motivated. This is the key, is the motivation. And so they adhere to these complicated rituals, very elaborate in previous ages. Why? The whole motivation is better birth in this world or going to a heavenly planet and enjoying like anything. That's what he says. Kamatmana Svargapara. Svargapara means dedicated to swar, to heaven. Kamatmana Svargapara, with their consciousness within kama, within material desire. Janma karma palapradam. To get a better birth, to get better activities, all this thing, to try to improve your material situation. Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, they perform very elaborate sacrifices. We can't even imagine the expense, all of the ghee that's necessary, employing the Brahmins. And I was pointing out, I think last night, then you have to have referees for the Brahmins. Ram, you know about that, Ramapati. How you have someone who watches, listens to the chanting of the mantras and stops them if they make a mistake. So you can imagine how important every syllable is, in the prayers. Bhoga Aishwarya Gatim Pati. Looking for these 2 things, bhoga, enjoyment, and aishwarya, the money to purchase the enjoyment. Gatim, that's their goal, you see. Now the very next verse is very important for all aspiring transcendentalists as well. It said, bhoga aishwarya prasaktanam taya purita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. Among those who are too much absorbed in material enjoyment and getting material wealth, and whose consciousness is bewildered by such things, which does bewilder you, they cannot achieve the Vyavasayatmaka buddhi, the one-pointed intelligence that's necessary to apply oneself in devotional service. Because it's really 180 degrees difference. The material enjoyment is exactly opposite. The desire for material enjoyment is exactly opposed to the desire for bhakti. Bhakti means the selfless service, not selfish service, selfless service. So the key is absorbing one's mind in the absolute truth, Krishna, and subordinating oneself. In other words, bowing down, manmana bhavaman bhakto majaji mam namaskuru. That namaskuru is very important, offering obeisances. Because we're here in the material world because of the false ego. You can't destroy the ego. Every living entity has a sense of self, who we are and what our function is and what we should do. In the spiritual world, we understand ourselves to be purely spiritual beings, servants of God, servants of Krishna. And we're very blissful in that awareness and in that activity. That's real ego. False ego is when you turn your back on the absolute truth and you get absorbed in this material energy and you identify yourself as an enjoyer and a dominator and controller of this material energy. Whether it's a human form or even in a lower form, you have your little field of control. Completely devoid of that understanding of who you really are and what your relationship with Krishna is. So in Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, we're trying to reform that diseased mentality, which keeps us bound here. When the mind is absorbed in these things, when controlled by the modes of nature, whatever species we may be in, you're bound here because the mind, which is filled with all these unfulfilled desires, will bring you back to another gross body. It's very nicely explained in the 15th chapter. So now Sati is describing transcendental opulences that Shiva has, which is beyond even what living entities can have. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the 64 qualities of Krishna are given, the 64 main qualities categories. And Prabhu was always fond of pointing out how the divisions are. The first 50 qualities we can also possess in minute degree. And the great devotees who are fully Krishna conscious, they possess them in the maximum amount that a living entity, an infinitesimal living entity can pronounce them. Qualities such as kindness, such as beauty, such as intelligence. There's 50 qualities. Then there's 5 that living entities cannot possess, but that demigod like Shiva possess. And you'll hear that she's talking about the opulences that she and her husband possess, that Daksha doesn't even recognize, he doesn't understand. Because they're not externally manifest often. So what it says is, Ata pancha gunesha angshena girishadasu sada sorupa samtaptak sarvagyo nityanutanak satchidananda sandranga sarva siddhi nishevata. So let's go through each of these, because these are what Shiva possesses. That's what the verse is about. So, Sada Swarupa Sampraptak. He's always in his Swarup, meaning that Shiva is never a conditioned soul. Even though he may be appearing on this earth or in this realm, he's never conditioned. And meaning he always understands his position as a servant of Krishna. Fully, And so, Sada Swarupa Sampraptak. Sarva Gyo. He has it, and this is where it gets kind of far out, because in English, omnipotence means omnipotence, or omniscience. You know everything. Only God can have that, as he says in the 7th chapter. Vyavasayatmaka buddhiyake. No, I'm sorry. Veda. How's it go? I know past, present, and future. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjana babashani tabhutani mam tavedana kashana. I know everything in the past, Krishna says. Shiva doesn't say this. I know everything in the past, everything that's ever happened. I know everything is happening now, and I know everything will happen in the future, and I know all living entities, but no living entity can know in full. So that's real omniscience, the gold standard. But here it says of Lord Shiva, who's not quite on the level of Vishnu, sarvagya. Sarvagya means knowing everything. But previously it said he has these qualities in anksha, in partial form. So one of the things he has is partial omniscience, which doesn't make so much sense in English, but that's what it means. He knows almost everything, all the time. So, but we don't have anything like that. Living entities, we can't. Nityanutanak, he's always youthful, like Krishna. There's never an old Shiva. He doesn't, get old. He's always youthful. Satchidananda Sandranga. His form is composed of concentrated. Sandra means concentrated. Satchidananda. Satchidananda, just like Krishna's, because he's Vishnu in contact with the material energies. And Sarva Siddhi Nishevata. He always possesses all of the yogic siddhis in full. He has them, although he may not display them. So you can see how these opulences can often be hidden. If someone knows everything, you may look like an ordinary person. Like Krishna sometimes, he's mistaken for an ordinary person, but he really knows everything. So therefore, these are impossible for you to imagine, Father. Because Daksha, his vision was clouded by his pride, by his false ego, and so he couldn't understand the opulences of Lord Shiva. By performing our concern with satisfying the bodily necessities. So the idea is that when your activities are colored by a material motivation, it changes how you see everything. There's this famous phrase, Atmavan manyate jagat. You see the universe in terms of yourself. Atmavan manyate jagat. In other words, if I'm very angry, then that must mean everyone else is, or at least they will be, if any minute now. In other words, you see the world according to your own mentality. So Daksha, he's saturated now with the material mentality. And so he's seeing Shiva's material. He sees the garland of skulls. He sees the crematorium earth. He sees that he has no home. You know, he's living under a tree. He looks like a vagrant. So he's grossly mistaken. That's what Sati's whole thing is here. So, so then we go through the purport here. So Sati was, he's kind of the disease condition of false prestige. And you remember now, he's not a demon, he's a servant of Krishna. You know, he's ultimately a servant. But it's almost like what happens with Indra. You know how Indra, sometimes he gets caught up in his power and his wealth, and he forgets himself. And he gets angry at the residents of Vrindavan. That's very famous, you know. And throws down all of the storm and everything. Or again, when Prithu was trying to perform 100 sacrifices, he had performed his 104 sacrifices, so he stole the last horse. He disguised himself as a sannyasi. You know, I mean, it's almost childish. Or when Krishna wanted to come and get the Parijata tree, you know, and Satyabhama was riding along with him, Krishna returned the earrings to Aditi. He came on a mission. But Indra said, no, you can't take the tree. So there had to be a battle. And Shukadev even expresses in the Bhagavatam disgust with Indra at that point. You read about it. So what is it? What is that? But he's still a servant, you know. And after the Govardhan Leela, he comes and he offers these wonderful prayers and please forgive me like that. So this is the sign of someone who's very prone to the mode of passion because of all the opulence and the power that he has. And this is the danger of going to the heavenly planets. This plane is better for developing bhakti, certainly for developing pure bhakti in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, than being in the heavenly planets. The opulence is too great. Even this age is worship. Satya Yuga, everything is very peaceful. Everyone's a Brahman. Everyone meditates for so many years. You know, it's not that Hare Krishna didn't work, but what's the key element to really achieve the final fruit of chanting the holy name? That famous third verse of the Shikshastika. Come on, let's hear it. Trinad. Amanina Amanana Kirtan. He said, this is the key verse. This is the key verse. Lord Chaitanya, Krishna's Kava says, wear it around your neck. Why is it such a key verse? Because Trinada Bisuni Chena, one should consider oneself lower than the blade of grass. In other words, really feel that you're the lowest of the low and helpless, and you need Krishna's mercy like anything. You know, you can imagine if you're very wealthy and powerful, it's much harder to call out like that. That's what Kunti's verse is all about. Janmaishaya Shuta Shibir. We'll discuss that in a minute. So Trinada and Tador Apisahishnani, tolerance. They go together. If you're really low, then you get kicked around a lot, isn't it? Like a little piece of grass. A piece of grass has to be really tolerant. You can get stepped on, blown away, burned, whatever. So tolerance, like a tree. Tree is the gold standard of tolerance. And then, oh, I am lowest. I am just like a blade of grass, and I am really tolerant. Just check it out. No, amanina, free of false prestige, of pride, and willing to give all honor to others. In such a state of mind, which is one can chant the holy name constantly. Now this is why Kali Yuga, and especially this Kali Yuga, in which Lord Chaitanya disappeared yesterday, compared to the length of time of Brahma's day and everything, right? We're practically contemporaries. Is so exalted. Kalim Sabat, this is in the 11th canto, right after, a couple of verses after Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam, the verse describing how Krishna appears as Lord Chaitanya. Kaling Sabaji Antyaya Guna Gyasarvabhaginaha Yatra Sankirtanena Eva Sarvasvarto Bilabhyate. Those who really understand what's going on, who know the essence of things, who are actual Aryans, progressive, spiritual people, they worship this Kali Yuga. This Kali Yuga, Kaling Sabaji, Because in this age, just by the practice of Sankirtan, one can achieve all one's spiritual aspirations, the actual goal of the soul, called svarta, better than any other age. So we actually, and didn't it say in the Bible, and the last shall be first and the first shall be last? What does that mean? It means that the first, those who are given all honor, the heads of society, the very wealthy and so forth, in the final analysis, they're last. Number one, they're so puffed up by all of that wealth and power. And number two, in order to get to that position, what do they have to do? Climb all over everyone else, and perform all kinds of sinful activities. It's all going into their bad karma account, and which comes due when they die. Everything material is taken away. All of the fame, all of the money, all of the prestige, sense gratification is gone. And often happens before death with great disease and suffering. So that's the last. The ones who are on top, and those who are last now, the humble, of course, just being poor is not good enough. That's a platform, if you have knowledge, to practice bhakti yoga. You have much less to give up. Imagine if you spent your whole, like 20 years accumulating a lot of money and power and so forth. It's much harder to give that up than if you're just that's why the youth generally take up. It's much harder to give everything up. So the last to be first. So being in Kali Yuga and recognizing our actual position and taking advantage of it, that's the best position to be in. So that's the Daksha. This is the beginning of the universe. So he's not going to be in that position yet, but he's going to be brought low, right? He's going to lose his head. He's going to get reborn with a goat's head. And then he'll be chastised. Then he comes up later and he recognizes his mistake. So then he describes several times here, Prabhupada calls Daksha's fathers flatterers. Now what is it about a flatterer that's different than one who just glorifies someone? We glorify Krishna, but are we flattering him? Who can say? This is a fine English question.
Flattering is actually an expression of respect.
That's a good interpretation. It's also, in other words, it's not sincere. You're doing it for a material purpose. The regime we have today is rife with flatterers, isn't it? Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but you have a perfect example every day in who's ruling the United States right now. I'm talking about. It's all, who's really sincerely praising the leader or the leaders. So the flatterers, he's surrounded by flatterers. Daksha is surrounded by flatterers, not by sincere servants and glorifiers. They one position. So that comes up. Materialistic persons like Daksha and his flatterers, who were flatterers and were engaged in fruitive activities. So now the thing that's interesting is that Shiva is also worshipped for material gain. And it's Sati who provides the results of that, because she's Durga. She's in charge of all the material energy. But the advantage of worshipping Shiva for material gain, rather than just being a total atheist and worshipping Mammon, is that Shiva's a Vaishnav. So at least you're connected with him and you have a chance of getting purified. If you're actually listening to what he says. That's why in the next chapter, a couple of chapters, you're going to hear Lord Shiva's great Song of Shiva. It's all bhakti. It's all bhakti. He's singing to Govinda and Krishna. You read it. It's very wonderful. He's teaching the Prachetas how to pray. And so Vaishnava also worship Lord Shiva. He has a position in the Dham. Vrindavan Dham is Gopishwar, the protector of the Dham. Lord Chaitanya, when he went to South India, he went to various Shiva temples. He didn't pray for anything material. He prayed for bhakti. He glorified Shiva for chanting the holy name. These prayers are recorded in a book by Murari Gupta called Chaitanya Charita, I think it is. I have that book if you're interested. It's very wonderful. So we don't dishonor Shiva. We don't insult him or anything. We honor him. But we don't worship him directly because there's no need. We can join with him in kirtan. you know. And but if someone wants to worship Lord Shiva, we say, okay, here's what Lord Shiva is worshiping. Don't you want to try to please Shiva the most? He's much more pleased when you pray to him for bhakti. After all, he's the best Vaishnav. Vaishnavanam Yadashambhu, it says in the latter part of the Bhagavatam. So if you really want to please Lord Shiva, then you become a good Vaishnava. Okay. And Prabhupada explains that the idea of offering sacrifice. Now, when we prepare prasadam, that's a kind of sacrifice, the cooking. Sometimes it's a big sacrifice, cook all day for a big feast, you know, you sacrifice your time. But what's the consciousness? What's the idea? The idea is that we're preparing this wonderful feast, like we're going to have Prabhupada's, you know, Janmashtami and then Prabhupada's appearance day, and we always like to prepare many, many preparations. So the idea isn't I'll prepare many, many preparations and then I'll eat them all. No, nobody even thinks like that, right? I may taste them, you know. But the idea is, oh, this is for the glorification, for the pleasure of the Lord. That's the motive. Should be the only motive. And then Krishna accepts the food stuff and it becomes transcendental, and by partaking of it, you become purified, spiritualized. Whereas what's the motive here? The rituals aim to satisfy, performers of fruited rituals aim to satisfy various demigods to achieve in return some material prosperity. The whole thing is in the motive. Everything is in the motive. And there can also be materially motivated bhakti in the modes of nature. In the Kapila Dev's teachings we learned about that. And he condemns that. He says it's like offering ghee into ashes. In other words, this is all about anyabhilashita shunyam from the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That real uttama bhakti, the devotional service, which has its benefits going back to Godhead and being reinstated in our original position, and then diving into the ocean of nectar and bliss. That goal alone can be achieved by this bhakti described in this key seminal verse of Rupa Goswami, which we should all learn. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavratam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. Bhaktir uttama. Any bhakti that has material motivation is not bhaktir uttama. So, anya abhilashita shunyam, devoid of every other desire or aspiration than pleasing Krishna. And then he lists the jnana, karma, dhyanavratam. Now interesting, avrata means covered. So uncovered, not covered by any tinge of desire for liberation, which is, the word jnana is there, and karma, ordinary sense gratification, and adi, anything else you may come up with. That's jnana, karma, adhyanavratam. So that's what it's not. What is it? Anukulyena krishnanushilanam. Behavior means activities of the senses, mind, intelligence. That is, whose motive is favorable toward Krishna. You're doing it to please Krishna. You may be a simple little devotee sweeping the floor or sweeping the patio, and your desire is not that you're going to get some salary. I want to do it for Krishna. I want to do it for the devotees. That's another pure motive. So the devotees can have a nice whatever. Serving out prasadam. Why are you doing it? So to please the devotees, so that you can. It's the only way to relish everybody's feast, and by serving it out. Anyway, so that's pure bhakti. Whereas here, those who are too much involved in material sacrifices, some material prosperity, going to heaven, getting better birth, whatever. Real sacrifice, however, is to satisfy Vishnu. And I'll end on this. The simple verse we should know from the 3rd chapter. Yagyartat kamanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Whatever you do in this world should be done as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, that work will bind you to this world and you'll be coming back again, suffer birth, old age, and disease. So how to mold one's life so one's every breath is a sacrifice for Vishnu, a servant for Vishnu, is for the pleasure of Krishna. That's what is taught here in Bhagavatam and in all the books of Srila Prabhupada and this institution. Okay, it's 8:30 now. Do we have any comment? We have 2 or 3. Great. Now we can activate this. Somebody needs to run this around. You had a question? Okay, so you do that and then you can use it to ask your question.
You mentioned Atmavan Manyate Jagat,
Yeah.
and I know Prabhupada,
Atmavan Manyate Jagat.
Prabhupada refers to that, but where does that come from exactly? Is that a verse, or that's just a...
You know, I don't know. I tried
proverb?
to research that one time,
Uh-huh.
and I just found it, if I recall, you know, in various lectures of Srila Prabhupada. It's probably some. You know, there are a whole bunch of sayings, which I have, thousands, that aren't from the Shastra. They're just spoken, just like we have Benjamin Franklin sayings and stuff like that. You know, and that may be one of them.
The other thing is, did you say that in Satya Yuga there are only Brahmanas? Everyone's, so you said everyone's a Brahmana.
That's what it says in the 12th canto.
Now, so there's no varnashram system? How does it work exactly? How does society work if everyone's a... No one eats...
Well, the Brahmins can do other work if in emergency situations, so I guess they have to...
I heard they
I'm
can't
not
do.
sure.
I heard they can't do Shudra work in emergency situations, so I thought they could do Kshatriya work and maybe Vaishya, worst case scenario.
So who's going to plow the fields? That's
Yeah.
the question. We'll have to check that out. But there is a verse like that where everyone knows meditation. They live for 100,000 years. It's.
Huh. Okay.
Go ahead. He had a question. Oh no, back there. Zachary.
So I've heard it said, or I've read somewhere before, that when offering obeisances to demigods, which I assume would be Lord Shiva also, you should offer obeisances with your right side, not your left side. But do you know, is that accurate, and do you know why that is?
Oh, that's a technicality. I'm not sure. Do you know?
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
Just for the demigods.
Yeah,
Which
offer
we-
obeisances to the right, with your right side.
So you're going down the other way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This presents some kind of a problem because have you ever been in one of these Hindu temples where you've got demigods and you've
Yeah.
got Vishnu on the same altar? You know? So, well, that's an interesting point. So if I find myself in that situation, I'll do it right. Dr. Ryan.
So I have a comment and a question. The comment is that years ago I had a realization that watch out for those that flatter you or kiss your very often, because I've noticed repeatedly that those are the ones that when they turn on you, they're the nastiest. The ones that flatter you the most in normal circumstances.
That's again being revisited in the daily headlines that we're reading if you follow the news, but go ahead.
I believe it. And my question was, you said that Shukadev Goswami in the Sanskrit of the Bhagavatam expresses disgust toward Indra?
Yeah, I'll show you the verse.
Okay.
It's exactly at that point when Krishna's going and asking him for the Parijata tree with Satyabhama, and then he refuses, and at that point Shukadev says, just look at this Indra. I mean, something like that. I'll show you. It's exactly like that.
Interesting.
Balaram, that's it.
Said some brahmachari exercise.
yeah, I
so
heard you.
Mukunda. I was joking. Yeah, but you were saying, Ryan, there's a saying, I don't know if it's from Shastra or where, but it's a saying that too much flattery is a sign of a thief.
Yeah, I
you know?
think Prabhupada said that one time. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happens, you know. Sometimes people, they flatter, and then, yeah, like you said, they just kind of turn on you, and then, you know. So it means they want something from you a lot of the times.
Yeah, for sure.
A material, you know, some material aspiration. They want something.
Well, you look at the whole,
Not all the time.
corrupt political establishment we have in America. It's all built on all of this, praise and paying people off, because they want something, The thing is thoroughly corrupt. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Anyway. By the way, thank you for coming. Hare Krishna. We have prasadam now.